against the Florida Panthers is going to be a, quote, slog of a game, but there is some baked-in opportunity if the Kraken play their cards, or I guess their roster right.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken, and the boys are back. Yes, they've been back on the ice for a few days, but today is the first day that we got to hear from the team. They are on the road in Florida. They've been there for a few days. We heard from Brandon Montour and Dan Bylsma, but we heard from Brandon Montour that he was able to take some of the guys out on the boat. He caught up with some of his former teammates. He talked a lot about returning to Florida. It's an exciting time. He talked about, honestly, how much of a slog, we'll get back to that word, how much of a slog it's been for him and his family, short turnaround, and he even felt like he missed out on some championship opportunities. We'll talk about that maybe as the season goes on the other side of this game, but I want to get into this game. Because as I mentioned, it's going to be a slog. We're going to hear from Dan Bylsma shortly as to why and what the challenges bring when you have so much time off in the middle of the season. And not for nothing, if you're an everydayer or an OGer, you can probably guess what my concerns are regarding what some of Dan Bylsma said. But there's also an opportunity, and that is that the Florida Panthers sent 8 players to the Four Nations tournament, the Four Nations Faceoff, and congratulations, Canada. I am wearing my Toronto Maple Leafs crew neck sweater. I was gifted this when I went to the Toronto All-Star Weekend. I don't have any real feelings about the Toronto Maple Leafs, but this is a really nice sweater. It's very warm, and it's my way of showing appreciation for We the North. So there you go. We'll get a little bit more into Four Nations reactions shortly, and we'll hear from Dan Bylsma about what he thought there. But what I want to talk about are some roster updates. I've been giving you these updates, so they probably won't be too surprising. But what we did hear from Dan Bylsma is that this is the good part of the break, that the 9 days off and the time in the sun, he talks about tans and things of that nature, was good for players like Riker Evans, who is expected to slot in tomorrow's lineup. But he just had a nagging injury that unfortunately got aggravated, so they shut him down as we went into the Four Nations break, formerly the All-Star break. And it was also this break an opportunity to get time on ice for Yanni Gourde, Jordan Eberle, who of course was on a conditioning loan with the Coachella Valley Firebirds. And he said he wasn't going to name any names. Riker Evans was someone we knew about, but he wasn't going to name any names, but some other players, the bumps, the bruises, the soreness that comes with playing high-level, elite-level hockey. The break was good for that. But there also are some baked-in challenges to having so much time off, aka the slog. I believe, as you'll hear or see if you're watching on YouTube in this clip, he's pointing to Everett Fitzhugh. That must be something that Everett has said either on the radio or in interviews with Dan Bylsma. But what is this slog, and how has the Seattle Kraken tried to mitigate some of the negative effects of too much time off in the middle of the season? So we're going to hear Dan Bylsma talk about the slog. But first, did he watch Four Nations? I know I did. So here's what Dan Bylsma had to say about the Four Nations face-off, including the championship game, and then the slog.
I think all of it. I think all the games I watched, including the one last night.
And other than the outcome, did the tournament exceed expectations? What did you think of the whole thing?
I think exceeded expectations by a mile. I think there was a little bit of anticipation as to the tournament format and how the games would be played, but I think the anticipation was it's a long time for an athlete to be, on break, so to speak, I guess, and be resting and relaxing. And fortunately, we had 3 days of practice here to ramp up and get our legs back. And I think, there were, some of the toughest practice of the year, especially the first two of the week, and there was a lot of tan faces, but there was a lot of huffing and puffing and red faces as a result. Coming back from the Christmas break, the games are always a little scrambly and a little rough. And what do we? There's a slog that'll be out there, and I think that's, we're talking about a 9-day break now, so it's going to be a slog. It's going to be rough. We did a couple scrimmage drills today, and it's not succinct. It's not connected at all. It's a slog. And I'm from the way the game's played and how the players feel on the ice, it's kind of what we're expecting.
So here's the thing. This season has kind of felt like a slog. So to hear that it's going to be a slog, even with some of the scrimmage drills that have been happening, doesn't make me feel great. I got to be honest. Doesn't make me feel great. The Seattle Kraken cannot afford slog games. Now, the playoff picture we've talked about in the last handful of episodes, I mean, it's less than 1%, right? Or is that, it's single digits either way. I think it's, the playoff odds are not great. If we look at, we look at FanDuel for the playoffs, Western Conference, a plus 7,000 for the Seattle Kraken. That is only worse than so the odds for the Seattle Kraken to make the playoffs, not great. We know that. But for them to win that game against Calgary and then to come out to play Florida, who won the Stanley Cup last year, and to be in slog mode, it doesn't make me feel great. Now, I do like the fact that a player like Riker Evans, who again we are expecting to see in the lineup, he's not coming out of a slog per se. If anything, it's about being back to fit. Brandon Montour apparently was one of the players that really got after it during the break. So expecting good things from him. He had a little bit of a hiccup, maybe just needed some rest going into the break. So to see him in good spirits, he is in a place that he knows, is very familiar with. And yeah, he said it kind of still does feel familiar and like home. So I'm expecting big games from those two defensemen, because if it's going to be a slog of a game, we need the guys that needed the rest to really step it up. That being said, Dan Bylsma almost jokingly said that, Riker Evans is good now and until he kind of gets hit again. So it doesn't sound like this is something that is done. He's not healed fully. And this could be something where Riker has to step back again. So all the more reason why anyone that's not feeling the slog, we need you to step up. And this is a game that I would like to see the Seattle Kraken go get, because they can. And I'll explain why I think they can go get this game later on the show. Coming up next, though, let's recap the Four Nations tournament. I mean, I love international hockey. If you're an everyday or an OGer, I love international hockey. So I wasn't surprised. I was thrilled. I could have done without some of the extra stuff. And I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed trolling a certain sector of my home country because of a hockey game and some of the messiness that was said. We'll get into that coming up on today's episode of Locked on Kraken. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss opening tip-off, or if you want to bet in the fourth quarter on a comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. If we're looking at the odds for tomorrow's game, the Seattle Kraken do not have favorable odds against the Florida Panthers. But hey, how much does that really matter because of this slog going on? We look at the spread here, and right now it's plus 1.5 for the Seattle Kraken, a minus 1.5 for the Florida Panthers. The over for the Kraken is at 5.5. The under for the Panthers, 5.5. So, there's a lot to prove still for this Kraken team, but there's a slog and worse on the Panthers side. Again, we'll get into that. And if you want to get in on the action right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And thanks as always for making Locked on Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here. And, this was an interesting Four Nations tournament. It was the first kind of best on best in a long time, certainly since I've been covering the National Hockey League. Not the first ever to exist. We heard a lot, especially on the TNT broadcast, about the 1980, 1970 Canada Cups and things of that nature. Of course, the 2010 Olympics, things of that nature. 2014 was actually when I really started getting involved in hockey. And at the Pyeongchang Olympics, that was huge for the women's side of USA hockey. Heartbreaking loss there, but then things turned around come 2018. Anyway, Canada. Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada, Canada, Canada. Some of the things that people in the US have been saying with regard to the 51st state has definitely been eating at some of the Canadian fan base. I mean, oh my gosh, Steve Dangle's live. Did you see that? Him just like in his very Steve way, just going off, you will never have this country. Like, it is intense. There is a lot of animosity that was created around the political climate, and this tournament just so happens to have been smack dab in the middle of it. And I thought that Rachel and Gil on Locked on NHL for today, Friday, had an interesting conversation. But first, let's see what Rachel had post-game coming to you live from TD Garden in Boston after Canada beat the United States 3-2 in overtime, because of course, this game was going to go to overtime. My co-host of the Women's Hockey Report, Rachel Donner, from the bowels of TD Garden.
Hi, this is Rachel Donner from Locked on NHL here following Team Canada's 3-2 overtime win at the NHL Four Nations Faceoff, with who else but Connor McDavid scoring the overtime winner. Given everything surrounding the game on and off the ice, it frankly couldn't have ended any other way besides overtime. It was a tightly fought game where Canada seemed to have solved Team USA's physicality from the first meeting between the two countries in the preliminary game, where USA won by 3-1 margin. Canada had sharper puck movement, and they matched a bit of the toughness along the way. Team USA had a giveaway problem throughout, but was able to tighten up their game late. It wasn't enough in the overtime. The Four Nations tournament came to an end after some incredible hockey with a side of international tension, and it paved the way for a sure-to-be thrilling Olympic tournament next year. For more on this game and Four Nations, tune in to the Locked On NHL podcast.
And so that's Rachel. She alludes to some of the tension and, it became like this thing, like the Tkachuk, Tkachuk brothers versus Brad Marchand or whatever. Listen, I am not really in the mood to defend either one of the parties. I think I'm just going to end that sentence there. Actually, I don't really have much else to say. None of them played for the Kraken, and oh my gosh, Brad, that licking thing was so freaking weird. I'll never let go of that. I just don't understand. That was weird, dude. That was super weird. And as far as the Tkachuk brothers, like, hey, I think pride in your country is super cool, with the exception when it becomes some of how they've portrayed it. I'll just leave it there. So Canadian forward Brad Marchand was sure to have the last word with Matthew and Brady Tkachuk. This is what he had to say. The Tkachuk brothers, they play their game. They do what they do. Sometimes when you shoot your mouth off to the media, it bites you. Oop. Ouch. You can do that during the season, but when you're playing best on best, it's different, and they got a little bit ahead of themselves. But they're great players. There are not many guys in the league that do what they do, and they're extremely effective. But when you start giving teams ammo, it can work against you as well. I believe the phrase goes F around, find out. And I'm a born United States citizen from the great state of New York, the Empire State. And the beautiful thing about being a born citizen of the United States is that I, as do the Tkachuk brothers, have an inalienable right to the rights given to us in the Constitution, which of course include free speech. But as Brad Marchand said, free speech does not, as he alluded to, free speech does not mean you won't catch them hands. Oh, and he dropped the mic. He dropped the mic on the Tkachuk brothers. If you follow me on Blue Sky, listen, I am from the United States. I'm from here. Okay. I'm also a realist. And a lot of people were running their mouths and using this hockey game as a proxy for something else that's happening in this country and that is impacting the world. And I don't get down with that because I'm a proud American. I'm a proud United States citizen. And that also means that I can check my own country. Because when you love something, it's like family. Sometimes you got to check your family, but also literally the Constitution gives me that right and demands it of me as a citizen. And some of the things that this hockey game were being used as a proxy for, that's why I'm representing Toronto. You can like Maple Leafs is just, but I'm representing Toronto because it's in Canada. And, Rachel, I'm not going to play the clip, actually. I was going to play it, but I'm not going to play it. Go listen to Locked On NHL. Rachel and Gil talking about how this is not the only hockey game. This is not the only sporting event where we have seen the action on the ice, on the field. I mean, I mentioned Jesse Owens yesterday. This is far from and likely will not be the last sporting event that meant more. I do think it's interesting, though, that hockey is very oftentimes a place that likes to remain apolitical, using air quotes for those listening on audio. It never has been. It never will be. And that's okay. We can be honest about it. But it's when you mess around and you act like you don't know that you find out real quick. So there was some extra juice for some of these Canadians for a lot of fans of the NHL. I don't know what teams all Canadians are a fan of. I think it probably runs the gamut, right? Including maybe some teams that happen to be in the United States. I mean, I don't know your life. I'm not trying to tell you how to live, but you know, that's the beauty of sport. Like, I can support players that play all over the globe, and I'll still always be from the United States. And I take responsibility in how I engage with the global economy, with the global community in sport, and in this case in hockey. And some of what was happening in the name of whatever the crap is happening in the United States right now, it's unnecessary. And so yeah, if the Canadians needed to get their clap back, just an added little cherry on top. I didn't like some of what was being portrayed. Again, apparently the president called Team USA I think he was also rooting for Kansas City, right? You see what I'm saying? It's messy. But sports and politics have always intertwined. Let's not act like they don't when it's convenient for you. Either way, congratulations, Canada. Brad, you said what you said. You know, Brady and Matthew, I don't know. I think Brady said after the game, this is a wake-up call, definitely gonna fuel the fire for the next bout, if you will, which is a one-way track to Milano Cortina. And yours truly is accredited to go to those Olympics. So make sure you stick around because, I've got some thoughts about the international game. And as we get closer to announcing what the teams will look like in hockey, we're way beyond that. But we've got curling, mixed curling. The U.S. team trials are happening. The curling qualifiers are actually going to be in Canada, which will be interesting next month, I believe. And so we've got figure skating, all of the sliding sports, a lot of qualifiers, or again, team trials happening to determine who will represent their country in the United States. And yeah, the Four Nations Faceoff definitely fueled the fire for some of these teams. Before I go, I said this on social media. The fact that on the broadcast, as Canada is celebrating on the ice, we heard, don't invite anybody else, as in just make it a USA-Canada showdown, face-off. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. No, I don't want it. I don't want that. I won't be surprised if we get more rivalry series. Like Rachel and I on tomorrow's episode of the Women's Hockey Report, we talk about Four Nations versus rivalry series. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of that, but I think more international competition and really leaning into the globalization of it all, that's when you're really going to be truly best on best. And does North America or US and Canada usually rise to the top? Usually. But that means, if any one of those teams does it, then it is absolute chaos. And I love it. I'm here for it. Czechia is looking great. Slovakia, I think, is going to be great on the women's side in another one, maybe two cycles. So there's plenty of hockey. Let's spread the love, right? I know that's not really the ethos that the United States is following because of what's coming out of the White House, but it's always been who we are culturally. Politically, we use that to our advantage, but culturally, it is who we are. And there are people in the United States that believe that within our bones, within our blood, and we celebrate that. So I'm happy for you, Canada. It was a little weird rooting for Binnington because I think he, like Brad, I just don't know what to do sometimes on the ice. I don't know if I can get down with that. So I'm happy for Canada as a whole. Brad and Binnington, you just happen to be on that team. But yeah, sure. Go for it. Have a time. So those are my thoughts on Four Nations. But the good news is that we don't have to talk much more about that. In fact, we are going to talk about one of the Tkachuk brothers because it goes back to the slog that we are in for when it comes to tomorrow night's game in Sunrise, Florida. the Seattle Kraken on the road taking on the Florida Panthers. Let's get into that coming up on today's episode. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Select Quote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Four Nations Faceoff Championship, and yes, the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from Select Quote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. Select Quote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion with a B dollars in coverage since 1985. What sets Select Quote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that have a one-size-fits-all policy, their licensed agents at Select Quote can tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. And if you are in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/locked-on. Go to selectquote.com/locked-on today to get started. That's selectquote.com/locked-on NHL. Select Quote. They shop and you save. And thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Tomorrow it's a game day. Oh, baby, I'm so excited to have Seattle Kraken hockey back. I'm very curious to see what we get from Capo Caco and how will the Slog impact the players that played in Four Nations. I mean, I think you have to think especially for the Canadians and the players for the United States. And to that end, that's why the key to the game, numero uno, is attack, attack, attack. Early, often. Ruthless attack on the forecheck. Use your speed. I need you to open your lungs, empty the tank, and get after it. The Florida Panthers, I believe, led the league with players that went to Four Nations. And they have Bennett, Reinhardt, Barkov, who played, of course, with, I don't know. I go back and forth on whether I think that was Capo or Barkov or Capo. Anyway, Barkov, Lundell, Mikola, who we've heard Capo talk about, Forsling, Luosterainen, and one Matthew Tkachuk. 8 players, arguably one of their best players. I don't know if it's really an argument. Matthew Tkachuk announced today he will not skate against the Seattle Kraken. We could tell in the Four Nations face-off that he was dealing with an injury. It was a part of the broadcast in that game leading up to, I guess, in the semis or something like that. I don't know how, whatever. In the game leading up to the loss that was against Sweden. Even in that loss against Sweden, Matthew Tkachuk did play in that game, but he didn't have his usual minutes. And, there was a whole breakdown on the broadcast that at one point you can see him on the bench saying, I can't go anymore. And it was more of the same last night. And so I'm sure people from the United States appreciate Matthew Tkachuk kind of going out there and giving it the old college try. Now, I don't know how Florida Panthers fans feel about that because now he's not playing. Do they need him to play against the Kraken? We'll get there. But the Kraken, not only do they know that Tkachuk is not playing, they know that there are 8 players, including Tkachuk, who competed in that tournament. Now, the slog, what is the slog for the players that were in the tournament? Are they just hockey fit, ready to go? Are they banged up and bruised? In the case of Matthew Tkachuk, it's the latter. We know he's banged up. But how are the other players going to respond? The Kraken don't need to worry about. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry about it, sweetheart, right? Don't worry about what the other team is doing. This is your time. Empty the tank, open the lungs, and attack this game. Statistically speaking, we know that the Seattle Kraken have to be in command through the first 40 minutes if they want to win a game. That's just what the numbers tell us. And we're going up against a Florida team that, if we look at the stats head to head, we've lost to Florida 2-1. So we can get within range of this team. They're going to be without their points leaders, Matthew Tkachuk, 10 points, 6 goals, and Barkov. We are expecting the captain Barkov to be there. He's got 8 assists. This Panthers team, 9th best power play at a 24.4% clip. So that goes to my second key to the game here. Be disciplined. I want you to empty the tank, use your speed, and if there's any slog on the side of the Panthers, let them hook you. Let them trip you. Don't be the ones in bad position. The penalty kill, 17th overall in the league. So if we play, open up the lungs, attack, maybe we get to the power play. Now, our power play is 25th best in the National Hockey League, but who's to say we can't turn it around and start tomorrow against Florida? I don't want us in the box. I'm not sure that I want the Panthers in the box, but at least that's a more advantageous, in theory, right, situation for us. Attack. Don't be the ones caught with your hand in the cookie jar. Make them, draw penalties is what I'm saying. Make them have to utilize their legs. Get them tired out if you can. Face off, pretty similar. 49.4% clip for Florida, 22nd overall in the league. 48.9% clip for the Kraken, 24th overall. The Kraken come into this game 4-5-1 in their last 10 games, obviously before the break. The Panthers come in 7-3-0 again right before their break. The last win that the Panthers had was against Ottawa. They also beat St. Louis. We got that win against Calgary, stopping a 3-game skid. One of those was a shootout loss. Even the Calgary game went to OT. All of the games, all of the past 10 games, so 7 wins, 3 losses in regulation for the Panthers. Bobrovsky or Spencer Knight, but probably Bobrovsky, 2.66 goals against average, a 902 save percentage. It's going to be Joey Decord. No Philip Grubauer. We mentioned Alice Stetska is back. He's got no stats, so he's perfect. Joey Decord, 19, 14, and 3, a 249 goals against average, and a 916 save percentage. We're still asking for a lot from Joey, so I hope he got all of the rest that he needed, that he deserved. I hope he was getting fruit baskets from the rest of the team, and they were sending him pictures and book recommendations and all of the things, because we owe so much to Joey Decord. Any sanity that we have left is because of his performances. Standout players. We're still saying 2025 is the year of Beniers. And you know what? The break ended pretty nice for Matty Beniers. And a little extra wrinkle here. Matty Beniers was supposed to be our representative at the All-Star game, not the last one where I got this really cool sweater, but the one before that. I was also at that one. And Matty B was supposed to be our representative. He got an injury, did not go to All-Star. So I want him to go to South Florida and muck it up. Year of Beniers, let's go. He's got 13 goals, 18 assists for 31 points. That is tied with Shane Wright, tied with Capo Caco, Jaden Schwartz, and Jared McCann leading the charge. Oliver Bjorkstrand, those are our top 3 scorers. McCann, 42 points, 28 assists. Though Jaden Schwartz, 18 and 18. And then Oliver Bjorkstrand, Ali, 15 goals, 20 assists. I want to see all those guys. We need to attack. Net front presence, that's going to be Jaden Schwartz. Oliver Bjorkstrand, sneaky passing, and maybe an unassuming shot that takes the Panthers by surprise. Matty B, or Shane Wright on the power play set up by Capo Caco. That's how I see it going. But all of those guys have to be dynamic. They have to be the leaders, the charge that we need, and then getting that back end help from Riker Evans, who's going to be in the lineup. Brandon Montour back in the lineup, and then Vince Dunn, heavy shots, get those pucks in deep and help facilitate the attack. That's how I see this game playing out. If the Seattle Kraken want to be successful, they have to force them way. Hello, English is hard. They have to force their way out of the slog. Punch the slog right in the throat. The slog, you don't exist. You don't exist. All that exists is these 2 points we're about to get against the Florida Panthers. That's what I have to say. That's what I have to say. And please let it go down somewhat close to that, because if not, I have to explain the Kraken away on our squadcast that we will have with Armando Velez. Couldn't make it work for today's episode, but we will be recapping this game. So that will probably, if not Sunday, definitely for Monday's episode, just have a few scheduling things that we have to refine with Armando. But we know we have a game. It's a game day tomorrow. And I want to see the Seattle Kraken absolutely attack this one. We can do it. The slog it's not real. It doesn't exist as far as we're concerned. And if we need to take advantage of some tired legs, some banged up, bruised bodies, let's do it. Start the second part of this season. It's a little over the second part. Start the other side of the All-Star break, Four Nations break on the right foot. Pedal to the metal, all gas, no brakes. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. And we hold fast. We stay true and loud and proud with all the P and V and grit and sandpaper. We say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Peace out.